everyone, and welcome back to Garry on Lockdown for Avast. After episodes about cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and freedom of speech, I'm pleased to have the rare opportunity to talk about one of my little hobbies, chess. Yes, some of you might remember that before I became a human rights activist, before I wrote books and gave lectures about the human-machine relationship, I was something of a chess player. I won't try to compete with Wikipedia here. So I'll just say that chess was my life from a very young age in the Soviet Union. Soviet junior champion at 12, then world junior champion at 17, then youngest world champion ever at age 22 in 1985, one of my old records that still stands. When I retired from professional chess in 2005, I had been the top-rated player in the world for 20 straight years. I won't say it was getting boring, but the truth was, at the age of 41, I realized that I had achieved everything I could hope for in the chess world. My mother had raised me to always want to make a difference, and that time for me was over in chess. And I still had plenty of time for a second act, maybe even a third. My immediate concern was the sad state of democracy in Russia. Leaving chess allowed me to indulge my other interests, not just politics, especially in how human decision-making was going to integrate with our increasingly intelligent machines, and what that would mean for our rights, for our security, our jobs, and for our society. Of course, chess will always be a core part of me and of my life. I haven't left the game behind entirely, and even turn up the board now and then for exhibitions. I've even played a few simultaneous exhibitions for Avast at conferences, which is always a fun experience. I play in St. Louis, Missouri every year to support the amazing work being done by Rex Sinkfield and his St. Louis Chess Club to promote the game. Under his patronage, St. Louis has become a global chess capital. I also coach some of the top young players in the United States and Europe a few times a year in the Young Star program. And the kids help keep me sharp. Even though I'm not a chess pro anymore, every once in a while a special opportunity comes along that I just cannot turn down. One of those came last year, when I was contacted through mutual friends by Scott Frank. He was interested in creating a TV miniseries based on a novel by Walter Tevis, a 1983 novel about an American chess prodigy named Bess Harmon. Called The Queen's Gambit. It wasn't even Tevis' most famous book about sports. He was also the author of The Hustler, about pool or billiards, which was turned into the great 1961 movie starring Paul Newman. But although chess is a very popular visual device in movies and advertisements, an entire movie or a whole series focused on the game is hard to pull off. Anybody can watch a ball go into a hole and understand what happened. Whether it's billiards or golf or basketball, but you cannot understand what's happening on a chessboard unless you play chess. And you cannot understand what's happening in a grandmaster game unless you are a grandmaster. But Scott was sure he could do it. The main character, Bess Harmon, an orphan from Kentucky, is a fantastic character. It's a coming-of-age story and a sports story, with the highs and lows you might expect. But instead of being about baseball or boxing, it's a chess player. Bess has substance abuse problems, boy problems, family problems, and even a few chess problems. After we talked, Frank asked me if I would play the role of Bess' nemesis, the Soviet world champion, Vasily Borgov. Although I'm no actor, I considered it for a moment. After all, how much acting would it really require for me to play a Soviet world champion? I had a lot of experience, but it would be a huge commitment, so I had to decline, and instead offered to be a chess consultant to the show. Along with making the chess scenes more authentic and composing the key games to match the description in the book, this also included my recommendations on making the Soviet scenes authentic. The first element was making sure the actors looked and acted like real chess players. There are hundreds of chess scenes in the movies, from Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca to the James Bond movie From Russia with Love, to Harry Potter and the X-Men. But they rarely look realistic at all. Not the board and not the movements of the players. Bogart was an exception, by the way. He was a serious player who always had his chess set with him on the movie shoot. Another famous Hollywood macho man, John Wayne, was another chess aficionado, though not at Bogart's level. For a whole show about chess and chess players, the Queen's Gambit had to be on another level. The board couldn't be set up wrong or turned sideways. The actors had to know how to handle the pieces and the clock. The body language was important. There would inevitably have to be some dramatic license here and there, but it was a chance to show that real chess is dramatic and exciting, as all chess players know. Then you have this very important element of Benny and his team calling from New York. It means the position had to be complicated. I found a few games and picked up one. American Grandmaster Patrick Wolf against Ukrainian star Vasily Ivanchuk from the Bill Interzonal in 1993. Both players, roughly of my generation or a little after, and who I know quite well. Wolf sent me a note a couple of days after the show was released. "I recognize the game, Gary. How on earth did you find it?" I explained that I had certain parameters with the opening, the number of pieces left, etc. So basically I ended up with about a dozen games that fit the description. It is not perfect, because it is not exactly as complicated as I wanted it. But it fit the book description. Game adjourned, complex position, and even with all the rooks going on, Borgov is pushing the rook and it's trapped in the center. The key part isn't from the actual game. It's a composition by me and my long-term analyst and archivist Alexander Shakarov in Moscow. Wolf was quite impressed by the depths of our analysis and the improvements on his old game. I preserved most of the book's game description, and I think it helped because that is the climax, and the climax is something that people always recall. I would never have imagined that Queen's Gambit would go on to become the top scripted Netflix show ever, #1 in America and over 60 other countries. Just incredible. Now, every interview I do about Russia and politics or about machine intelligence, there has to also be a Queen's Gambit question. Everyone loves it, and that's wonderful for chess, and I'm always delighted to do anything I can do to promote the game that gave me so much. It's already caused a big boom in searches for chess online, registration at online sites to play, and in chess sets sales. Those things were already going up a little because of the pandemic, but now it's a real wave. It's quite possible that fictional Bess Harmon will have a bigger impact on chess popularity than any real chess champion. Now that I've made it sound like the Queen's Gambit was my show, I can introduce you to the person whose show it really is. Scott Frank, the showrunner and director, is my guest in lockdown for Avast. I first have to congratulate him on the show's incredible success. Garry on lockdown for Avast, and now special guest, Scott Frank. Thank you very much, Scott, for joining us. I spent about 15 minutes telling our audience about chess and about my engagement with you and with the series. But one question that everybody is asking is, so how come that you did pick up Walter Tevis' novel to do this series?
That's the question, isn't it? And first of all, thank you for having me here. What a treat for me. The book, I read the book many years ago, and by the way, Bill Horberg, the producer, had tried to get me to read it for a couple of years. And I read what it was about. And I said, this is a book about chess. There's no movie here. There won't be a movie here. And he said, just read it. And I said, I'm really busy. I can't read it. This is in the 90s sometime. And then a few years later, I read it. And I called him up right away and I said, oh my God, what an idiot I was. This is one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. It reads like butter. It's like a thriller. It's so wonderful. And I so enjoyed every second of it. We have to do this. Is it still available? Have I messed up? And, and then he proceeded to tell me how many people had been trying to make the book into a movie since it was published in 1983. And we tried. And this is now, I think by then it was the early 2000s, and we couldn't get it made. Nobody wanted to make it. And so I dropped out at a certain point. And this whole time, since very soon after the book was published, a gentleman named Alan Scott controlled the publishing. He bought the book outright. He didn't option it. He actually bought the rights. So, and he was a writer in his own right. He had written a lot of Nick Rogue's movies, including the classic Don't Look Now and some other things. And so he wrote a script that Heath Ledger was going to direct briefly. And it was going to be Heath Ledger's directing debut. And I believe he was going to play Benny. But he passed away from a drug overdose and the movie never happened. And so years went by and I made a miniseries at Netflix called Godless. And afterwards, it occurred to me that the book is a miniseries, not a movie. It's a limited series. That's the way to do it. That's why people have had trouble, because there's a different audience and you can tell a much deeper story. It becomes less about the sport than it does about the character.
So you say that, the all attempts to turn the Walter Tevis novel Queen's Gambit into a movie failed, because the movie was too concise. Even at 2 hours, 120 minutes, not enough to explain the rise of Bess Harmon and all the intricate details of chess. But speaking about other books of Walter Tevis, because he started with a very famous novel, The Hustler, and it worked in the movie 1961.
Yes. And very similar
his
novel.
Last book, Color of Money, was it was not as good, though it gained even more traction because of combination of Paul Newman, aging Paul Newman, and rising young and rising Tom Cruise. But it's the why it took the miniseries concept, because chess is so different from the pool, from billiard, and it just people needed more time to sort of get acquainted and engaged.
I think there's a couple reasons. I think one reason it didn't get made, another reason, aside from the fact that it was too reductive to do it as a movie, the other reason it didn't get made was because the subject, movies became spectacle, and it was very difficult to get people to spend money on a film like that. And yet to do that film right, it would cost a few bucks. It was very hard to do it inexpensively because it takes place all over the world. So those were the two stumbling blocks, I think, more than anything. And the limited series, what it presented was they were telling all different kinds of stories, and they were suddenly looking for those books that people had tried and failed to adapt to make as movies, or had tried and that would be better served as miniseries. And so the timing was perfect.
And now it's another question that everybody asks. So how come that it was so natural? So it is I remember Judith Polgar asked me, was it true that they actually memorized the moves? Because even for her, it looked pretty natural.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of practice to look natural, and a lot of work to make it look natural, and a lot of movie magic to make it look natural. But the biggest, I think, kudos go to the actors, because particularly Anya, and Anne Marchand, who played Borgov, and Harry Melling, who played Beltic, and Tom Sangster, who played Benny. They really worked hard at practicing in terms of their movement and how to move, so that before each time we would shoot a game, we would only shoot it in 5 to 10 move blocks. So they knew what we were shooting the whole game, but they would only have to remember 5 to 10 moves at a time. We had tried to give them all the moves ahead of time, but there was just something that didn't work. It just didn't feel right. Whereas it was a little better to do it that way. And they were much better able to focus this way. And so that was, and then the way it shot, how we chose to shoot it, just the angles and so on, and being when we're on their faces and when we're on the board and when we're on both and when we're close and when we're wide, all of that contributes to this kind of seamless sense of competence.
Yes, and speaking about actors, was it just it's pure luck of picking up Anya for this main cast, and also Borgov as well. So this is how did it come? Because definitely her personality was a very big element of success of the series.
I think
so lucky shot or careful selection.
I think both. I think you're always lucky. There's always an element of luck in every choice you make. And I also think that, I was taught very early on in my career that the one mistake you can never fix in the editing room is the wrong casting. If you miscast a role, you're done. And so there's no way to fix that. And so I was very careful, and I tend to have a good gut about things because I've also written it, so I can hear it and see it. And when somebody walks in and there's a ding, 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 like when a fighter pilot locks in on a target, and watching her on screen, I had a really good idea that she was going to be right for it.
So it's when you just had, the first shot was her, you knew it was the right choice?
Well, she came to me very tired from doing another film right before us. So she literally had a single day off between the two films. So I was a little concerned about her well-being, not so much her ability. I knew she could do it, but I was worried that she was too wrung out to be able to do what I knew she could do and what I needed her to do. But you know what? She's a pro, and she very quickly found her balance. And from her first day shooting, she was Beth Harmon. And I think that Anya, to her credit, understood the character so deeply and personally, and related to it. And Anya's been working since she was very, very young. So it was a good fit. But when I met her in person, the first time I met her, I just knew she was Beth Harmon.
But you also, it's in the movie, you had to find an actor, a very young actor for early days, for childhood.
Right. Now that's even harder.
You were, again, I'm curious. So how did it work? So you picked up Anya, and then you looked for someone looking like her.
Exactly.
So how difficult was that?
Very difficult, and I had tons of help because there were casting directors in America, Ellen Lewis and Olivia Scott Webb in England, who were all helping me search, and they were looking for they were looking for young girls, and we even, Bruce Pandolfini even gave us a ton of kids from the chess clubs that he knew, and actual chess players. Didn't work out. We used a lot of real chess players in various backgrounds and certain smaller parts throughout the film, but mostly those folks were from Germany where we were shooting. But the girls, it was really, we were down to 6 girls, and 2 out of the 6 were actually brilliant. So I ended up splitting the younger role into yet another. So instead of only having 2 girls playing Beth Harmon, I had 3 girls because they all actually worked really well together.
So, okay, you mentioned the chess players. So, but it's, and you said in Germany, but all the shooting was done in Germany.
Yes, in Berlin, 95%.
That's what people, just they didn't understand, because they asked me about, locations in America. Yes, one of my friends said, "Oh, I could recognize they were shooting in Kiev."
No. Good. That makes me very happy.
Yes. So it was all Berlin and the Berlin's countryside, yeah, the suburbs.
Yes, and a little bit in Toronto. We and outside, 2 hours outside of Toronto, we in Canada. We shot maybe 5 days there, but we shot, 80, 85 days in Berlin. So the bulk
What
of
did you shoot in Toronto?
Toronto, we shot the street that she lived on with her parents, that little Kentucky street with the blue house, and the girl's house she goes to visit. The exterior, only exteriors. We shot the exterior of the department store that she and her mother go to when they get off the bus. And by the way, all of this was helped with digital enhancement. And there's a great video on YouTube you can watch that shows you how it's all been done. And then we shot like the exterior of her high school. We shot the crash site where her mother is killed and the roads for that in Toronto, and a few other things like the university where she plays Benny for the second time when she beats him. The exteriors there, but the student union was inside, the house was on stages, the inside. I mean, we shot every interior you see, including Las Vegas, Mexico City, Paris, Russia. All of it was in Berlin. Some of it on stages, some of it on actual locations in and around the city. The orphanage, the Methuen Home Orphanage, was outside Berlin. The trailer that they lived in was outside
Berlin. Yeah, now that these days with digital enhancement, you can shoot almost anywhere. And you pick up Berlin is just economic reasons, or just you thought it would offer best of two worlds because it's East Berlin, of course, and East Germany.
Well, all of the above, plus a few other things as well. We knew we needed a hub to shoot from. We knew we absolutely had to have one place that was the most convenient for all the locations, so we could move the least amount of time, because it's very expensive to move the company every time you change locations. And I also knew that the production designer I wanted to work with was German. So we started in Berlin. We went to Prague, but we quickly rejected Prague because it's a very old world city, whereas Berlin was destroyed. So it's a very new world city, which we needed more of for this. And Prague just felt too much like a fairy tale, and there's more of a coarser, edgier thing to Berlin, which felt more like our show. But in Berlin, he took us around and he showed us the building that became where they played the tournament in Moscow. He showed us the building that became Las Vegas. That actually exists, that building. And just the outside around it is different. But you could show her walking in, and that lobby that we turned into a hotel lobby and those stairs, that really exists. But the outside, it's all blue screen. And so in Mexico City, where she's playing inside, that's a theater in Mitte, and that actually exists. That's the lobby of the theater that we turned into a hotel there and put all the chess boards around. So it just became we were going to do 3 weeks in Toronto and the rest in Berlin. Then it became 2 weeks in Toronto and the rest in Berlin. And then it became 5 days in Toronto and the rest in Berlin.
Look, Scott, and just to wrap up this conversation, so I have to ask the question, though I know the answer, but everybody asks, and you guess what the question is, and
there will be no second season.
There will be no second. I don't want to deliver bad news. So to the fans of the show.
Go ahead. You want to ask the question properly? I'll stop.
Okay, it's any chance for a new adventure of Beth Harmon?
Today, I think not. I mean, I really wouldn't know. I think my worry is I'm so pleased with the way this came out. If I tried to dive back in again, there's nothing left for me to say. So if I felt like there was a ton of unfinished business, maybe. But for me, it feels so complete that I can only cheapen the experience I just had by trying to do it again.
Yeah, I have to say, I agree with you. There again, it's a big disappointment for old chess fans, new chess fans, but yeah, let them enjoy this show, because I keep saying that Beth Harmon did more to promote the game of chess than all the world champions, real world champions.
That's wonderful.
Thank you very much, Scott, for joining us, and for this, congratulations for this phenomenal success, and good luck. I'm sure we'll see more of you and your products on Netflix or elsewhere.
God willing. Thank you, Gary.